Allie with iMore here at the Pod Drop. So we've already performed our drop test on our iPhone 5 and it shattered pretty spectacularly. So what we're going to do is work on replacing the display. Always turn your phone off before performing any repair. So what you're going to need for this is you're going to need a security screwdriver for the dot connector. And we'll link in the article where you can get all these parts. Obviously a replacement LCD digitizer combo, 00 Phillips screwdriver, some type of pry tool, spudger tool. I like the ones with the pointed end and a flat blade end, but you know, the plastic ones work fine too. I've also got here a metal spatula and some razor blades. Depending on how bad the screen is cracked, you might not be able to get a suction cup to stick on here, and you can see, you know, it's going to pop right off because it's spidered. It can't get a good seal. So if this is going to be your case, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but still possible. We're going to start by using our security screwdriver, and we're going to remove the two screws on either side of the lightning connector with our security screwdriver. So I'm just going to prop this up and remove the two screws on either side and set them aside. These are the same size screws, so you mix them up. But as always, as with every mod we've ever done, organize your screws, because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time remembering where they came from. So set them in little groupings, whatever's easiest for you to remember. So now that we removed those, we're going to go ahead and start trying to remove the display. Alright, so in this case, we're going to use straight edge razor blades, which are these. And then I've already got this started just to kind of minimize the video length, but what we did is we got a straight edge in here along the bottom. There are, you know, obviously once you remove those, that's pretty much all that's holding it in besides small clips that line it up in the frame. So once you get an edge, you can use a pry tool and you can just kind of pop it up around the edges. There are little clips, so if it helps, you know, using a spatula tool or a flat blade, you can work your way around the edges and start popping it up. So I'm going to lay it down flat here so I can just kind of angle this, and obviously some glass might fall out, especially if you've broken it bad enough. And now we got our edges out. So once it's out of the frame, you can just swing this up. You don't want to try to remove it straight off because you still have some cables connected up here. So you can see right there, you've got 3 00 screws, 1, 2, 3, that are holding this shield down that are covering the LCD digitizer and front-facing camera. So we're going to have to go ahead and remove these 3 screws. And these are different sizes, so make sure that you are placing these in an order that you're going to remember for reassembly. So again, 3 screws holding the shield in place. Okay. I have noticed this, and you might too, this top screw up here, on some of these they seem to be magnetized, and on other ones they're not sticking to a magnetized screwdriver. So be careful when you pull that one out. In this case, I'm just going to pull it directly out with the shield to avoid losing it in the phone. There we go, it popped out. That's happened on 2 of these now. One of them was okay, and one of them just was not coming out magnetized. So here's the shield that sits on top of there. We can go ahead and set that aside. And now we're going to remove the display from the rest of the device. So you've got 3 cables that you're going to need to pop up. One is right here. Trying to get an angle to where you can see this. Pop up this one to the far right with your pry tool. Number 2. And underneath here you've got a number 3, and that one might just pop up on its own. So now we've detached the display from the body of the phone. And set the body of the phone aside for a minute. And now we're going to work on actually, there's going to be some components, because just like any other display, your replacement part is probably going to come stripped down. So you're going to have to transfer the home button, the front-facing camera, the earpiece, and some of the other components up here onto your new display that's not broken before putting it into the phone. So what we're going to work on now is taking this shield and all of these components off your cracked screen and transferring them. The first thing you want to do, again, different size screws. Your earpiece shield up here, you've got 3 screws at the top. 1, 2, 3. Down here at the bottom, you've got another one holding this shield on. And if you ever pulled apart a 3G or a 3GS, very reminiscent of that, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws that we're going to remove from this to remove the earpiece shield and the shield holding this in place. So we're going to pause while we remove these screws, and you can go ahead and pause and do the same. Alright, so we've went ahead and removed the 8 screws that hold the top shield and the main shield in. This shield is going to pop right off. That goes over the earpiece, so we're going to set that aside. Now we can go ahead and remove the main shield. So all I'm going to do is take a pry tool along the bottom here, and it's going to lift and slide right out. So that guy's going to come off real easy. Set him aside. Same thing with the earpiece up here. Just going to slide right out like that. You can see there's 2 contacts that hit the main. There's your earpiece. Set that aside. Now, this cable is a little bit tricky. You want to be careful with this guy. It's your front-facing camera cable. It also contains some sensors. And underneath here, if you can see how it's folded right here, you've got a noise-canceling mic right here that sticks into the front assembly. So we're carefully going to peel this cable, pop that sensor up, and peel the remainder of this cable off. This side is held in with a little bit of adhesive, so if you take your plastic pry tool and just kind of work underneath there, it'll pop right off like that. So this cable, we can go ahead and set them aside. Now we're down to our bare assembly, except for our home button. So what we're going to do, there's a shield covering it. Use your 00 screwdriver, and there are 2 screws on each side holding it in place. So we're going to remove that. Okay. And the shield pops right off. But you've got this little contact on the right hand side that's held on with adhesive. So carefully, this cable is very thin, so you want to peel it off gently. You can see how that's on there. And set that aside. Home button, held in with a rubber gasket with some adhesive. Easiest way is just going to be to push your finger up, take a pry tool or a metal spatula tool, and get one corner loose. This one actually popped up pretty easy. And pop it right out like that. And now we're ready to transfer all this stuff to our non-broken display. Alright, so this is our new display. As you can see, just like the old broken one over here, we've taken this one down to bare bones. What you're probably going to get these shipped at, I would highly doubt that you're going to get ones that come with the small components you're going to have to transfer them, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to start with the home button because that's the easiest one to get on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our home button, and these are actually a lot easier to line up. The older phones, you could put them in crooked, they'd spin. Since this one has a nice little grooved edge on there, it's much easier to line up. Just to make sure, you can flip it around and make sure that your home button is straight. Then set it flat down. And I would just take a pry tool or a spudger tool and push down just to make sure the adhesive sits in there pretty good, because it's got a little bit of adhesive around the gasket. Once that's in there, we can go ahead and grab our shield that goes over the home button. And this little guy gets stuck on here like so. You can line up the screw holes. That's the easy way to make sure you're sticking this little guy down. And again, maybe use your pry tool to make sure that adhesive is on there good. Then we're going to use our 00 screwdriver to replace the 2 screws on either side of the home button shield. And there's one. And 2. Alright, now we're going to move up to the top of the phone. And this is where it gets a little gritty, because what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to loop this cable back through. The easiest way I've found to do this is the noise canceling mic has a little piece, you can see that metal piece on it, that sticks in that hole right there. So that's a good way to make sure you're lining up the cable correctly. You can see that the cable kind of folds over, and I know it's kind of hard to catch this on video, but we'll get lots of pictures so you can see what I'm doing. It just sits in there right like that. This folds over, and the front-facing camera sits in there right like that. And then you're going to see these guys kind of just line up. This guy right here, one of your sensors, is going to sit right in that hole right there. So you might have to bend the cable a little bit to get it to sit in there correctly. And you can tell, you'll hear it snap into place if you've got it in there well. And then this cable is just held down with a little bit of adhesive on the right hand side. So once you've got that in there right, and I'm pretty sure we do, we can go ahead and move on to replacing the earpiece speaker. This guy right here, you can see that there's a groove on the back here, and these little gold contacts hit right up here on the display, so it's pretty easy to tell which way this goes in. So what we're going to do is line this guy up and stick them right down. Alright, so now that we have our earpiece in here, we're going to go ahead and replace this shield. At this point, we're only going to put the top screw back in because obviously the bottom one attaches to the main shield. So we're going to lay that right down. You can tell how it goes. And we're going to pull our 00 Phillips screwdriver, and we're going to put that top guy in. It's the long screw out of the ones you took from the top. So just so this shield stays in place. Okay, so that should, and I wouldn't tighten it all the way yet until you can line it up with the main shield. So now we're going to move to replacing the main shield, and you're going to see, you're going to be able to tell if you have your earpiece speaker lined up correctly, because it should slide right underneath here, and that's why I said don't tighten it all the way down yet, so the shield's a little bit easier to slide into place. And there we go. So we can see these screw holes line up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 00 again, and I'm going to replace these screws that hold the main shield and the earpiece speaker in. And then you can go back up here and tighten that one down. And again, with any screws, you don't want to tighten them extremely tight or you can strip them. So if you ever have to take it apart again, you're going to have a problem. We got one more screw down here to replace, and then the 4 in the side. So we're going to pop this one in. And the 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to pause and we're going to replace those. Alright, so now we pretty much have everything in place to place our new display on. One thing you might want to do is test that home button. Since it's on there with the metal bracket, you should make sure that it clicks nice, it's flush, it's straight. So if that's on good, you should be good to go with the home button. It's nice with these, it's really easy to test to make sure you're getting that click. So now we're going to bring back the body of the phone, and we're going to reconnect this, the new screen, onto the logic board. And you've got 3 cables here. So we're going to start with the bottommost one, and we're going to reconnect that one to the logic board. There's number 1, and then we're going to move underneath here to number 2 and number 3. And this one kind of catches up on the frame a little bit, so you need to make sure it's over far enough. This cable, you actually can tuck it underneath the number 2 cable if you want. That should hold it at a little bit more straighter angle. Otherwise, alright, there we go. So now that we've got those in place, we can go ahead and bring our shield up Alright, if you're new to this, I would normally use my finger to hold up the display. I'm doing this so you guys can see. I'm having someone else hold up the display so I can show you where these screws are going back in place. So, you don't want to bend it completely backwards because those cables can come up from the logic board, so you want to make sure you secure them. So we're going to put screw number 1. Okay. Alright, so now we're going for screw number 2. And I will warn you, for some reason, these screws for this shield do not seem nearly as magnetized as screws in the past have, so just be careful when you're putting them on the edge of your screwdriver. So now that we have those in place, we can go ahead and lay down our display. You'll notice, I'm going to try to make this visible, you can see that there are tiny little ridges in the top of the display. And these need to sit underneath the frame. So when you go to lay this down, you're going to want to push the top down first, and you're going to want to make sure that those slide into place. So when you lay down the phone, everything slides into place nicely. So you don't want to apply a ton of pressure, but you're going to have to apply a little bit to get it to sit in there. So, and then everything should just snap into place nicely. Alright, so now that we've got the display in place, all we have left to do is take our security screwdriver and replace the 2 screws in the dot connector. So I'm going to stick this guy on my screwdriver. And there's one. And number 2. And again, don't strip them. These are very easy to strip, so don't, tighten them too tight. And that's pretty much it. We can go ahead and boot up our phone. And if you did everything correctly, you can go ahead, boot it up, and we'll let that boot up. You can pause it. Alright, so our phone has booted back up. And you can see everything's functioning correctly. Since you did remove sensors, I'd suggest going into a dark room, making sure the ambient light sensor works, placing a test call, placing your fingers over the prox sensors. Obviously making sure the earpiece and everything up in this upper part works correctly. Front-facing camera. Other than that, that's about it. And that's how you're going to replace a cracked or distorted display on an iPhone 5.